And I don't want anybody to know your personal information, but just give us a range of income. You make it six figures?
Between $200,000 and $300,000.
Between $200,000 and $300,000, you're 21 years of age. How important has it been for you to be able to learn how to handle rejection?
It's almost taken a lot of pressure off a lot of different scenarios. If someone says no, there's just another person in line to say yes behind them.
So is this a hard and fast opinion where you're going, don't pursue this in your 20s, chill out? Are you still holding fast to that for yourself?
It depends how I can acquire the skill sets and how quickly and where I can acquire them and the most logical path to do so.
One of the many reasons I wanted to do this interview, and I really wanted parents and young people to hear your perspective. What do you think is wrong? What's a giant weakness? What's missing from your generation right now? I recently had super entrepreneur and just all-around stud Alex Hormozi on the program. And in talking with Alex, he shared a story of a young man that I said I absolutely need to get his side of the story. Jacob Hopkins, a neighbor of Alex's who had the gumption to pitch an idea, but more importantly, the humility to take the feedback and then turn it into a gig with Alex, and now an unstoppable future. So much goodness from this young man. Check it out. So Jacob, do you remember the first time you had an actual conversation with Alex?
Yeah, so I think there is two substantial points where we had conversation. The first one, really where we first started building our relationship sort of, was when I started washing his cars. So growing up I think I started when I was around 16, I had a mobile car washing business. So I went around door to door knocking doors to try to get clients. And I can't remember exactly how we got connected, but I started washing his cars.
Yeah.
And really from there, I was washing his cars for a couple of years. The first substantial connection that we made, other than him coming out and giving me some advice on how to make more money within the business after I washed his cars, was I had this app idea. And I went and I was trying to figure out who has money, who's in entrepreneurship, who do I think I could pitch this app idea to? And from washing his cars, I had, his contact. So I texted him and I said, hey, I got a business idea. Do you mind if I just present it over to you? I went through this, whole PowerPoint, this whole slideshow. I was super nervous going through it. But after that, he kind of realized that I had a tick for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And he said the idea wasn't good, but we started lifting and spending a lot more time together after that.
I'm curious, how did it feel when you've got this guy that you respect? He's successful. Mm-hmm. Your relationship is, it's kind of surface at this point, and he tells you it's a bad idea. I want to truly know, to the best of your memory, what that felt like to hear him go, it's not a good idea.
It didn't feel good initially, but I really respected that he told me that.
Right.
Because I had other people around me telling me it's a great idea, you should go out and run with it, follow your dreams, whatever it might be. So it was really refreshing to have someone just say, it's not a good idea.
Did you believe him?
I don't think you should do this.
Be
I
honest.
believed him when he told me why.
Okay. So at first he hits you and you're kind of like, oh, come on, man.
He told me even if it was a good idea, I didn't have the skill sets to be able to make it happen. So that made a lot of sense. And then I was humbled in the fact, I have a lot to learn. I have a lot of skill sets to acquire.
Right. What's the advice beyond listening? I think listening was what you did,
mm-hmm.
but I think what you did right was asking. You just kept asking. My guess is you'd ask him one thing, he'd tell you, and you just kept asking. It was like every time he'd hand the ball back to you, you just threw it right back. There's this intimidation that's natural when you're a young person, you're with an older person who's very, very successful. And in some ways you feel like you're bothering them, you're pestering them, and you aren't adding any value to them because all you're doing is extracting a lot of knowledge and wisdom from Alex, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much value do you think he got from knowing that here you're showing up ready to ask questions, and more importantly, you're learning. You want to be there. You want to soak it up. What do you think it did for him from your viewpoint?
So that's something that I was trying to figure out for a long time. I was was curious, why is he spending this time with me? How am I providing value to him? Right. And I had that feeling of, am I bothering this guy? Am I pestering this guy? That sort of thing. And as I've gone through this journey of, learning sales, and then, on our team, helping other salespeople grow into their role, it dawned on me that a teacher learns twice. Hopefully he was able to ask questions, to me, and answer questions, and realize from my level and my journey that I had a different perspective. And then he could create, he could talk to all the people like me because he knew what perspective that I was looking through.
So good. And I don't want anybody to know your personal information, but just give us a range of income. You make it six figures?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep, yeah.
Between $200,000 and $300,000.
Between $200,000 and $300,000, you're 21 years of age. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing you got no debt.
No debt. That's the most beautiful part.
There we go. I like that. Dave Ramsey and Alex Hormozi love that. All right. Now, what's fun is about your story is you had an entrepreneurial bent as a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what am I talking about? You're still young. But here you are in your teens, and you start a car washing business. But you have a video that's very popular that says, whoa, slow your roll. Don't start a business now. Why?
So the biggest thing is from that first conversation, really that first impactful conversation with Alex, when he said, because I wanted to start, an app, build a company, from an app. And he said, well, you don't know how to sell and you don't know how to code. Why do you think you can start that?
Yeah.
And it was a great question. That's where I was like, well, you're kind of right. I should probably learn those things.
Right.
Right. And so that's where it's, if you're able to figure out the person that you want to become, or the business you want to build, or whatever that you want to do, and then work backwards by skill sets, it makes it, in my opinion, a lot easier to do so.
Right.
Right. Because then you have it step-by-step.
Is this a hard and fast opinion where you're going, if I remember correctly, you're like, hey, don't pursue this in your 20s, chill out. Are you still holding fast to that for yourself?
It depends how I can acquire the skill sets and how quickly and where I can acquire them, and the most logical path to do so.
So that's what I love. You're telling young people the timeline takes care of itself. We just always want to set a goal. We want to set a timeline, and we drive towards that instead of letting our skill set, our experience, in other words, what we need to learn and what we need to do. And I'm going to throw a third one in there that you've really figured out, and that is who we need to connect with. But I think your generation, even my generation, but it's been going on for decades, the message in school is memorize, regurgitate, so you get a good grade, so you can go to a good school, get a good diploma, and then get a good job. And it's so hardwired into just the nature of our Western Hemisphere school system. And Alex and I talked about this in our interview. It doesn't square with real life. So I think you haven't been taught how to be patient while persisting, because I think you've been told, well, if I do this, 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 and this, I'm going to get a good job and have a good life. What do you think?
I would agree, because that's what we're always told. Right. So it's like I think I realized that I didn't want to go to school just because I didn't want to be put in that box I think I was telling my parents, I didn't want to go to school when I was a sophomore in high school. Right. And when I started watching YouTube, watching different things, on the internet, and that kind of was able to change my perspective a little bit and say, oh, there's different options out here. Is there a better way to get to where I want to go?
How did your parents handle that?
At first they were not pleased.
Of course.
And at first they didn't believe me when I first said it, because I was 15, 16. And I was telling them, yeah, I don't want to go to school. I'm probably going to drop out of college. I'm going to start my business. And they are like, yeah, sure. And then I kept telling them. And when they realized I was a little bit more serious, they were concerned. But then when it got to the point where I actually did it, I was fortunate enough where they were super supportive, scared, but supportive.
All right. So what's the conversation like with mom and dad now? I mean, dude, you're killing it.
They're happy. They're really happy. They're super excited. So it's been cool to see them when and I'm super excited, like grateful for their support, but see them when they were maybe a little bit more doubtful with what was going to happen. And then just over the last 2 years, being able to show that I made the right decisions in terms of my future.
Yeah. What do you think if we were to Zoom mom and dad in right now and I just hit them really quick and said, hey, what would you tell parents? What would you guys tell parents about what you've now learned and how you handle a kid like Jacob? Because there's a whole lot of Jacobs that, to be honest with you, Jacob, I really think there's tens of millions of you that are afraid to actually say what you said. You're shaking your head. Yes. You agree with that?
I agree. I talk to a lot of them every day. They're out there.
What are they saying to you? Because you're communicating with them on YouTube. What are they telling you?
At the end of the day, it's the fear of failure. Like, what if this doesn't work out? Right? What if I do fail? And it's the same fear that I had, right? And I think the excuse that they give, or maybe not the excuse, but what they're scared of on a different level, is what their parents are going to say if they're not successful.
That's 100% it. Will I disappoint my mom and dad? I think that's what's driving.
Right. So as soon as I moved out, I was like, I'm going to sign a 6-month lease.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my back against the wall and I'm going to make this work.
Wow.
Worst case scenario, if I completely fail and this was completely the wrong decision, I'm completely wrong about this, I can go back to school for the next 2 years.
Right.
No problem. I'll just go right back.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. Universities are still sitting there waiting to take your money.
They'll take it.
Yeah, they will take it. That's so true. Okay. You've talked about this some in your YouTube videos. I'm just curious, what do you love about selling?
From a bird's eye perspective, I believe after being in sales, because initially it wasn't my goal to get into sales.
Sure.
Right. You hit it. I was just looking for any opportunity that I could.
Get me on the ladder, baby.
And that was the first thing. But after really diving into sales, you start to realize a lot of things in life are sales, right? It's just influence and being able to, influence people and communicate, and really seek to understand what people's needs are and how you could potentially help them. Right. So it was initially, it's when people think of sales, it's just a transaction, right? Selling one thing, XYZ, whatever it might be. As I've grown into, and I guess the reason why I love sales now is because it translates to so many other pieces to my life. Right. So it's building one skill set that almost builds a skill set, or it's a tool that I can use in any arena.
It really is. Sense. To the point that, would you recommend, whether they have any idea what they want to do with their life or not, getting into a role where they got to sell something?
I would. Based on my personal experience, I would say it's a great place to start, because you also have to take full accountability of every decision that you make. Right? It's the closest thing to owning a business. And if you're able to put yourself with that much pressure very young, then moving forward, it's just everything else is going to hopefully feel like a lot less pressure, because you got to hunt to kill to eat. Right. And if you can build that mentality early on, take full accountability, I think that has served me up until this point.
Yeah. I think there's one aspect of sales that I think every person come out of high school, like if I could just, with my pencil here, and I could go, poof, I'm going to create a national program. If there was only one reason that I would have every young person go into sales, it would be to learn how to handle the word no. If we go philosophically deeper behind no, and why I think it's so important is, we humans, we hate rejection. We will make all kinds of horrible life decisions to avoid rejection. How important has it been for you to be able to learn how to handle rejection?
It's almost taken a lot of pressure off a lot of different scenarios in my life, because I realized that if someone says no, there's just another person in line to say yes behind them, whatever it might be. So it makes me feel a lot more comfortable going after a lot more opportunities, and then having the perspective of volume negates luck. Like if this person says no to whatever it might be, this person says no, I'm just one step closer to getting someone to say yes.
That's so good. That serves us in a lot of areas of life, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, there's coming a day, although I'm not sure you're going to need any investors, but you hang around Alex enough, then of course you're going to have investors, right? Big ideas. But the idea of being able to put yourself out there now, you just don't have a whole lot of fear around no anymore, do you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been cool, especially, you know, I would have been super scared to create content 2 years ago, right? Or talk in front of a camera, do something like this. But it's just over the last 2 years, I've not only had so much experience talking to people, but also getting told no and getting hung up on feeling that rejection. So then it just builds more confidence in myself to be able to tackle more opportunities.
Yeah. One of the many reasons I wanted to do this interview, and I'm really thankful that you did it, by the way, because I think it's a fantastic story. But honestly, I really wanted parents and young people to hear your perspective. What do you think is wrong? What's a giant weakness? What's missing from your generation right now?
I think being able to look at their future and take accountability for it rather than just, oh, everybody tells me to do this. This is what everyone before me has done. I'm just going to continue to do the same thing. Right. And so I think being able to say and look at your situation and think about it logically and just take accountability that there's no guarantees out there, right? You're not just going to go to school, get a 6-figure job, and then that'll be it, right? You can't just follow the line and do what everyone else is doing and get the same exact result. Which, talking to a lot of people my age, it feels that way. Like they're just like, oh, I'm just going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to get X, Y, Z result. But it's like everyone else is doing the exact same thing. So why would you get a better result than the average if you're doing the same thing as everyone else?
Let's flip it. What's right? What are you hopeful when you're talking to these young people, you go, man, this is good. Mm-hmm. People are sleeping on us. We're going to sneak up on them. What's right?
And I might contradict myself a little bit here, but people are starting to gain more perspective on that. If that makes sense. Slowly I start seeing people ask more questions about, you know, what I'm doing, what other people are doing, realize that there's not just one way to achieve the goal that they want to get.
Good. So what you're seeing there is there's some intentional curiosity, starting to challenge the process, question the norms. Mm-hmm. Okay. Big movement out there among a lot of young people, anti-work. You know, they've grown up watching parents, grandparents gripe about work like it's a 4-letter word. Mm-hmm. What are your views on work and its role in the human condition and the human experience?
Well, I think it's extremely important because, and the word's funny because it has such a negative connotation, right? But it's like, what else? If you can really figure out why you're doing the work and the meaning behind the work, even if it's stuff that you don't want to do and stuff that's not fun, then it becomes a challenge too. And it's like, what else are you going to do with your time? Mm-hmm. Right. The biggest reward you can have is working hard for something and then seeing some sort of result from it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. What are you thinking about right now as a 21-year-old? What's the reward? Alex and I went deep. You remember that? I know you watched it. What? I'm just curious, and this can change. But what's that reward? What's that real reward you're thinking about?
The first one is just the financial and time freedom. Like that's just the first one I want to check off the box. And then it's building the skill sets to be able to gain the leverage to be able to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. But what will you do with that? What will you do with that financial and time freedom? You're not a guy that's just going to play video games and hang out on the beach.
I'll probably get back to work, right? But then it's because that's almost at the point that I'm at, and I guess my perspective, my life experience so far is I want to check off that box to then see what happens after that and what I can work on after that. Yeah. After I make that happen.
Okay, let me tell you what I hear listening to this, and you correct this because I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's freedom. Mm-hmm. You will have freedom to try anything you want to try because you're not shackled to the normal constraints. I mean, to me, it's free to be truly who you want to be. And it might be in that moment when the ideas really come to full clarity for you.
Exactly. It's having the options to do what I want to do.
All right. Got to let you go here, but I want to come back to this education industry. And I call it an industry on purpose. It's manufacturing millions and millions and millions of wanderers who are just kind of wandering around trying to figure out. And you, my friend, you strike me as a wanderer. You're always wondering what could be, what should be. And that, to me, is really the whole goal of true learning and education, is to learn who we are. Who are we? What's our unique contribution? What would you say if you could gather all of the big shots, the bureaucrats, the politicians, the glitterati of education? What would you say is broken about it right now in the American system?
I mean, the biggest thing that's broken initially is just the return on investment, right? So and it's in a vacuum, so there's no competition.
So true.
Right. So it's I mean, that's the big, like if you're just looking at overarching, the return on investment isn't there. It doesn't make sense. But because the system's the way it's set up, if you looked at buying any other product or any other service, you look at that return and you'd say, this doesn't make any sense. But because it's in that vacuum, then people just do it mindlessly. Right. So I think that's the first thing is I do believe we're in the next 10 to 20 years, it's going to hit a point where, especially with all the online education, everything going on, where things are going to get a lot more specialized and you can buy skill sets a lot easier from very credible people that are actually doing the stuff. I think unless they figure out a way to combat that, there's going to be a lot of changes.
Yeah, and it's happening right now, shifting right below our feet. Great stuff. Jacob Hopkins, tell people where they can follow you on YouTube.
It's at Jacob Hopkins 1.
Very nice. I think this is valuable stuff, man.
Thank you. I seriously appreciate your time and having me on.
Big thanks to Jacob Hopkins for hanging out with us. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to give us a like and a subscribe. If you're listening via podcast, would you please follow us and give us a 5-star rating?